This is David McCullough, the author of The Greater Journey and reader of the first chapter of The Greater Journey. I am so very pleased that one of my books has again been provided in this form, because I believe strongly that a writer ought to be writing not just for the eye, but for the ear. We need stories. We need stories the way we need food and water. It's essential to our human condition. Ed Herman is narrating the audio version of The Greater Journey, and I couldn't be more pleased that he's doing it. He's a superb reader, and from years of seeing him in film and on stage, and from listening to him read, I have come to the conclusion there's no one who does a better job.
Hello, I'm Edward Herman, and I have the pleasure of narrating The Greater Journey by David McCullough. And I'm enjoying myself enormously. It's an audiobook that comes at a long list of others by David that I've done, and I'm very grateful that he likes what I do, and we're having a great time doing it. The first book by David McCullough that I did was John Adams, which was hugely successful. They all have a kind of stateliness to them and a measured march through the material. He writes beautiful, simple prose, and it's about as good as popular history gets, I think. Do I have a favorite? Maybe John Adams, because it was the first, and he's such an interesting character. That was the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
I believe strongly that we have in the English language one of the greatest vehicles of expression in all human history. And I believe that one of the strengths and beauties of our language is to hear it read aloud, and to have the great writing of other times read aloud to us. I think that telling stories, and especially oral storytelling, is essential to understanding history. I know from my own childhood, growing up listening to grandparents tell stories, parents tell stories, teachers telling stories, that that's where my own interest in stories of the past began.
The book that David has asked me to read this time is a fascinating book about the contribution, basically, of French culture to American arts. The stories that he chooses are riveting. I mean, they're really interesting. This book, The Greater Journey, is filled with anecdotal narratives about the various people that came from America and began to grow and blossom in Paris.
Almost anything that is set in the 19th century, whether one is writing history or biography, has the great advantage and the great draw of wonderful letters and diaries. Those surviving testimonies to their experience, to their feelings, their opinions, their ideas, are literally invaluable. And they bring not only that person or those persons to life, but it brings the story to life, consequently. It enlivens the audio version considerably, because suddenly you begin to hear these people speak, as it were. You listen to their use of the language, their particular turn of phrase, or their style of interpretation.
David's work, David's writing, reads very easily aloud, and that's why it's so much fun to read it. He seems to write with the voice in mind. The influence he's had on me is basically trying to come up to scratch with his magisterial presentation of his material, the way he writes and the way he speaks.
I found the recording of an audiobook a great stimulating experience. I always come out of the studio feeling better about the English language, better about how we can't really judge what we write until we hear it. I hugely enjoy the idea that maybe there'll be other people who will enjoy what I've just written or what I've just read as much as I've enjoyed writing it and reading it aloud. I love to do this. I love my work, and this is part of my work. I welcome you listening to this version of The Greater Journey.